Hey guys, Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you my first impressions plus on-feet video of the brand new Mizuno Wave Ignitus 4 in the launch white and black colorway. Now inside the box, all you get are the shoes themselves. They do not come with any extras. So let me get these guys out of the box really quickly, and we'll take a closer look at the brand new Wave Ignitus model from Mizuno. This is a shoe that I'm personally really excited to try out, mainly because one, I'm a big fan of the Wave Ignitus line, and two, this is kind of a dying breed of soccer shoe. It's a more solid construction with a very large rubberized striking element, something we're just not seeing all that often anymore. So again, really interested to see how these things are going to perform. So in today's video, we're going to be going over all of the tech specs, of course comparing it to the previous Wave Ignitus 3, taking a look at the weight of the shoe, as well as talking about how these things fit and feel on feet. So if you are interested in learning more about the Wave Ignitus 3, please stick around and watch the entire video. If you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, they are available now out of the UK. So if you click the very first link down below in the description of this video, that's going to take you to the review page on my website, where you will find buy it now links for the Wave Ignitus 4, again out of the UK, for about $200 US. So they're pretty much on par with most top-end models as far as price goes, which is certainly not unreasonable. So again, if you're interested in a pair, first link down below, go ahead and check it out. And with that being said, let's get right into the review. To start things off, let's go over all of the tech specs as well as the new performance features with the Mizuno Wave Ignitus 4. Now visually, the shoe looks a lot like the Wave Ignitus 3. The general layout of the shoe has not changed, and if you're talking about the heel counter, sole plate, and stud pattern, this being the firm ground variation, that is absolutely identical to the Wave Ignitus 3. They haven't changed a thing there. The main changes are in the actual upper, which I would say aren't drastically different, but it seems to be a nice improvement thus far, especially in terms of how the shoe feels out of the box. Now the upper is a prime skin synthetic material, which is technically the same synthetic we saw on the Wave Ignitus 3. Now keep in mind that this is the standard Indonesian made version of the Wave Ignitus 4, and there is a made in Japan version as well, which we didn't see with the Wave Ignitus 3. The made in Japan version of this shoe, which I really want to get my hands on, technically has a kangaroo leather upper, I believe here at the front. So it's not a lot of leather, but it's something is better than nothing in my opinion. And I'd be curious to see what other changes there are between this version and the made in Japan model. So just keep in mind that the version that's linked in the description of this video, that's for this exact shoe, the Indonesian made version of the Wave Ignitus 4, whereas there is a kangaroo leather version of the shoe that is made in Japan and will of course be more expensive, and at the moment really isn't available anywhere except for in Japan, which just makes them a little bit more difficult to get your hands on. But nonetheless, this is, like I said, the standard variation of the Wave Ignitus 4 that I really like. Now the prime skin synthetic is pretty much the exact same thickness as what we saw on the Mizuno Wave Ignitus 3, with the major difference being that it feels softer and more flexible, and that's due to a less significant lining material. The liner is a lot thinner and a lot less restrictive, and there's also a lot less stitching on the shoe. It's a different layout altogether, which makes the upper feel a lot more flexible out of the box, which is a very good thing, because that was, if I had one major complaint about the Wave Ignitus 3, it felt pretty stiff out of the box, so there was somewhat of a break-in period, which this is still a fairly stiff shoe, but again, not on the same level as the previous model, so that's a good thing. The synthetic material itself, they say that the prime skin synthetic is supposed to offer a leather-like sensation. It really doesn't. It has a slightly smooth, almost artificial leather grain-like finish to it, but as you guys can see, there are shiny spots which are slightly grippy on the ball as well. So you kind of have a combination of different finishes on the surface of the prime skin, but ultimately, this part of the shoe, unless you're dribbling, is not something that's going to have a major impact on the overall feel. What's really cool, and really the main reason why you would buy the Wave Ignitus 4 is for this very large striking element here, which has been reworked in comparison again to the Wave Ignitus 3. So as you guys can see, it's all rubber. You have it in the main striking area right to the base of the shoe, which is kind of cool, and then it splits pretty much right down the middle of the toe box area, which is an interesting design, again kind of carrying over from the previous model. And it has this kind of, reminds me of a cheese grater type look to it, where it's very heavily textured. It's lower at the front and then raises at the back, and the pattern pretty much just continues across the entire striking element, which cuts off right about here, I would say right at the start of the midfoot on the medial side of the shoe. Now the type of rubber that they've implemented here is more of a kind of harder rubber as opposed to a sticky, grippy rubber. So it's still going to provide more grip on the ball than a smooth synthetic would, but it's not going to be overly sticky like a Predator Instinct would provide, or something like that. So just keep that in mind. But again, this is not something that's new to the Mizuno Wave Ignitus line. They've never really used a particularly grippy style of rubber. It's always been this kind of harder material, which does get the job done and does offer a really nice feel in terms of giving you that little bit of extra grip, but at the same time being nice and responsive. So because of this heavy texturing, it's just gonna offer a slightly different feel than what we got from the previous model, but in all honesty, nothing that's too significantly different. As you guys can see, the little cutouts in the actual element show the perforated synthetic backing that rubberized element. So for the most part, it's not overly thin. You're going to still have a decent amount of material along with the rubber between your foot and the ball when you're striking, so just keep that in mind. Now another significant change, I should say, coming from the Wave Ignitus 3 is this area of the shoe right here. Normally, you would find what they call a Mukaiten panel, which is a rubberized kind of striking element. It's just a square of rubber normally that is designed for specifically for knuckleballs, and that you're supposed to hit that particular part of the shoe, and the rubber that's a little bit more grippy is supposed to enhance the overall knuckleball effect, if you will. Again, this is one of those shoes that I think a lot of people buy with the hopes that it's going to make their knuckleball that much better or make them able to shoot a knuckleball. That's really something that's down to technique. No shoe is going to allow you to strike the ball better or improve your technique. That's down to the player wearing the shoes. But you can see they've completely eliminated the rubberized element here. Instead, what they've placed is what they call a cushion control panel, and you have kind of three of them. It's a memory foam kind of padded area with a very slight texturing to it. It's a different type of synthetic. It's kind of got like a slight micro texturing, I would describe it as. But for the most part, it's not overly grippy. And you have, like I said, kind of memory foam inserts here, kind of like what we got from the Predator LZ1, for those that can remember that shoe that had the pads through the midfoot. This obviously goes a little bit higher up, and it's kind of right on where you would strike the ball if you were trying to shoot a knuckleball. So this padded material, again, it's supposed to allow for more of a dense dead spin effect on the actual ball, where it's not spinning at all once it leaves your foot. But again, ultimately, it comes down to your technique as opposed to the shoes on your feet. This is just one of those little elements that they've implemented here that, again, is supposed to allow you to hit a knuckleball perhaps a little bit more easily, and also is going to act as somewhat of a control element, giving you that nice dampened effect through the midfoot, which is pretty cool. The lacing system completely off-centered, as you guys can see, with the laces being pushed slightly to the outside of the shoe. The tongue itself is a synthetic material with a thin layer of memory foam lining the entire thing. So lace bite's not going to be an issue here. Really like this tongue, a nice improvement over the previous model. And then moving on to the back of the shoe, it's completely unchanged coming from the Wave Ignitus 3. You have a smooth synthetic leather liner on the inside, almost like a synthetic suede, I would describe it as. And then the insole, I'll remove that, is pretty much the same as well. It's a pretty much smooth mesh material on top, and then it's a single layer of foam with a blue foam padded insert right there in heel, just for a little bit of extra cushioning. So nothing too fancy, but it does get the job done. And then moving on to the back of the shoe, you're going to find that the sides are cut fairly low, at least the lateral side. The medial side's cut a little bit higher. So your heel sits pretty deep inside the shoe, especially considering how high the back comes up. And again, it gives you this nice stable sensation. Plus, you get this very large heel counter that does a good job of preventing your heel from sliding side to side. Like I said, gives you that nice secure sensation. Plus, it adds a lot of extra protection to the back of the shoe. So for me, really big fan of this large heel counter. It's something we don't see all that often anymore, but you do get it here on the Wave Ignitus 4, as you did with the third model as well. Moving on to the sole plate and stud pattern. The sole plate in the heel features the Mizuno Wave technology, which, as you guys can see, there are what appear to be two little waves here sitting below the actual heel counter, where the sole plate kind of separates itself. Now again, the idea here is that this is supposed to allow for a little bit of flex and just added heel cushioning. Is this going to feel cushioned in the heel like a pair of running shoes do? The answer to that question is no, but the heel cushioning is, like I said, pretty decent in this shoe. It's very secure in the heel area, I guess is the best way to describe it. So if you generally struggle with having a good fit in the heel area, The Mizuno Wave Ignitus 3 or 4 for that matter, like I said, has a nice solid feel at the back of the shoe. As far as the stud pattern is concerned, again, completely unchanged coming from the Wave Ignitus 3. Same thing goes for the sole plate. Because of the more flexible upper, the sole plate itself feels more flexible as well, especially when they're on your feet. And the stud pattern is really designed around striking the ball. You're going to get a nice firm plant. You can see that in the heel area, you have all these studs that are kind of different shapes. They're all angled differently, and then you have this one smaller stud right here on the back lateral side. That's there for when you actually plant your foot to strike the ball. That smaller stud's going to dig into the ground more easily, and then as the rest of your foot hits the ground, of course, everything's going to lock itself in place, so you're less likely to slip. It's kind of a cool little implementation. Again, not something you can really feel when you're wearing the shoe, but I like the idea and the concept behind the actual stud pattern. And then the forefoot, you can see you have a lot of coverage, all bladed studs, all different shapes, all different angles, and they're fairly large as well. So you have a lot of different studs under your foot, which gives the shoe a very stable sensation. The studs don't necessarily dig into the ground all that well unless the ground is particularly soft, but traction is not an issue. You get good multi-directional traction. It digs in quite nicely. And even on harder ground, because you have so much surface area in the studs themselves, it distributes the pressure across the bottom of the sole plate pretty evenly as well. So stud pressure is not going to be an issue here at all. And then you get two rivets right here at the tip of the toe where, of course, the sole plate is riveted to the upper. So as far as durability is concerned and sole separation, it's something that is very unlikely with the Mizuno Wave Ignitus line. The Wave Ignitus 3 was built like a tank, and the Wave Ignitus 4 is pretty much no different. So if durability and longevity is something that you value in a pair of high-end soccer shoes, you can expect the Wave Ignitus 4 to last a very long time, just like we got from the Wave Ignitus 3. In terms of weight, I thought we'd compare the Wave Ignitus 4 to the Wave Ignitus 3 just to see if there's any significant weight increase or decrease between the two. So I'm going to be weighing in both models for you today in real time using this scale. Keep in mind these are both the exact same size 9.5 US, so this is a very fair comparison. We'll start off with the Wave Ignitus 3, throw them on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.3 ounces, the equivalent of 236 grams. So remember those numbers, change the scale back to ounces, pull these off, and we'll throw on the Wave Ignitus 4, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.4 ounces, the equivalent of 238 grams. So you're talking about a weight difference of 2 grams or 0.1 ounces, which is pretty much insignificant, meaning that there really hasn't been a weight change between the Wave Ignitus 3 and the Wave Ignitus 4. They're nearly identical, not an amount of weight that you're going to notice either in hand or on feet. And as far as this style of shoe is concerned, right at the 8-ounce mark is actually pretty light. That falls into the same category as a pair of Adidas X15.1. So if you're looking for a lightweight shoe that at the same time is going to be decently protective, very solid on your feet, and is going to provide more of a power boot type sensation with its very large striking element, you can absolutely not go wrong with the Wave Ignitus 4. In terms of aesthetics, I really like the look of the Wave Ignitus 4. Not too far off from the 3, just a little bit more simple. In this launch colorway especially, there isn't much not to like. It's a very simple black and white color scheme with the only contrast in color being the Mizuno logo in gold right there on the tongue. That's pretty much covered up by the laces anyway, so a color choice that I think nobody's really going to complain about. Really, really simple. I like that it has this kind of half and half design in terms of how they split the color, where the majority of the lateral side is white and the majority of the medial side is black. And then of course you have the black and white in the sole plate and the heel counter, white laces, black Mizuno and Ignitus branding right there on the lateral side, a white Mizuno logo right there on the back of the heel. And again, just a really simple, straightforward, very aggressive looking shoe. That's kind of been, for me, what I've always liked about the look of the Wave Ignitus line is that it's always very aggressive. It's always very kind of futuristic and modern looking. And I think they've maintained that here with the Wave Ignitus 4. Again, not too far off from the third version. I think they just toned it down a little bit. But ultimately, the final product, in my opinion, looks absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to wear these and see what people think. Because I always find that when I wear the Mizuno Wave Ignitus line, more people ask me about my shoes than any other pair that I wear. So that's something to keep in mind as well if you are looking for something unique. People really seem to like the look of the Wave Ignitus, especially in person. So let me know your thoughts on them down below in the comment section. Do you like how these look? Why or why not? And with that being said, let's move on to the on-feet portion of the video so we can get a better idea of how these things fit and of course what the sizing is like. All right, so here is a look at the Wave Ignitus 4s on feet. On my left foot, I have the stock white laces that come with the shoes. And on my right foot, I have a pair of white and black grid pattern SR4U replacement laces. If you're interested in a pair of replacement laces for yourself, the website to go to is www.sr4ulaces.com. You find a direct link to that website down below in the description of this video. Now, in terms of how these things fit and feel on feet, they're not too far off from the Wave Ignitus 3. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, they are not quite as stiff. The material feels thinner just because it has a less bulky liner on the inside. So overall, the shoe does feel a little bit more flexible out of the box than the previous model, which is definitely a good thing. But overall, it still is a fairly firm upper that does have some decent kind of structure and rigidity to it. So if you're looking for that super soft kind of leather-like feel, you definitely don't get it here from the Wave Ignitus 4. It definitely has more of a solid, structured sensation on your foot. As far as the overall fit is concerned, it does have a tighter fit overall. It's not super narrow by any means. They're going to be suitable for most people, but it definitely doesn't have a lot of extra space. It's not a high volume fit, which is actually a good thing. The shoe feels nice and tight on your foot, but not uncomfortably tight, of course. And again, it just makes the shoe feel a lot lighter despite it being a more solid construction. At the front of the shoe, you're going to notice that you do have this kind of split in the synthetic going right down the middle of the toe box and forefoot area where it transitions from prime skin to that rubberized kind of element, the striking element, which is a little bit awkward in terms of how it feels. It's an improvement over the previous model though, in that they did move the seam a little bit, so you don't notice it quite as much, but it is something that could potentially cause some discomfort during the break-in process, but ultimately won't be a major issue down the line once you get used to how these things fit and feel. As far as break-in is concerned, you're not going to find much stretch from this shoe. The rubber element's not going to really stretch or expand, and the prime skin itself isn't really going to give all that much either. So the way these things fit from right out of the box is the way they're going to fit for their entire lifespan. Width-wise, they're going to be suitable for most people. Again, they're not going to stretch all that much, but it has a very deep kind of open lacing system. So you have a lot of kind of room to expand the sides of the shoe should you need that little bit of extra width. So again, they're going to be suitable for most foot types. And as far as sizing goes, it's the exact same sole plate and stud pattern as the Wave Ignitus 3, so the shape and fit is pretty much the same. The Wave Ignitus 3 I wore in both a 9 US as well as a 9.5, and ultimately found that going up a half size was a little bit more comfortable just because the material itself is on the stiffer side. So for me personally, I'm wearing these in a size 9.5 US, which is a half size larger than I would normally wear, and I find them to be pretty much perfect in length. So if you are looking to order a pair of Wave Ignitus 4s, I would personally recommend going a half size up in order to achieve the best and most comfortable fit. Alright guys, that is it for my overview of the brand new Mizuno Wave Ignitus 4. Expect to see more follow-up content on this shoe in the near future on the channel. In the meantime, if you guys are interested in a pair of these for yourself, be sure to check out the review page on my website. That'll be the very first link down below in the description of this video. On that page, you'll find the high quality images of this exact pair that I took myself. That'll give you a better idea as to how they actually do look in person, as well as buy it now links where you'll be able to pick these up for their $200 retail price. So again, if you're interested in a pair, first link down below, go ahead and check it out. If you have any questions at all regarding the Wave Ignitus 4, leave them down below in the comments, and I definitely will get an answer out to you. If you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked in the description as well. Other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.